Welcome again to the S.E.M podcast. Jack Bryce and Zach Hewlett are here again, and tonight we're joined by our friend Steve Harward. Did I say it right, Harward?
You got it. Yeah, A+.
Good. I'm glad. Steve, it's good to have you. We've been looking forward to this conversation for some time now, and we're glad to have you. Tell us, where are you calling from tonight?
I'm in southern Indiana, just across the river from Louisville, Kentucky. A little town called, well, it's not that little, but smaller city, New Albany, about 40,000 people. Lived down here for about the last 10 years or so. So yeah, it's good to be here, and thanks for having me on the podcast.
Oh, absolutely. We're excited to have you. Well, to start off, Steve, give us your experience of getting ready to go on a mission and your reaction of getting your call to Scotland.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in Utah. I was born in Salt Lake and lived around Salt Lake for the first decade. And then my parents divorced when I was about 10 years old, and we moved to Emery County. So we moved to Huntington, Utah. Went to school, high school at Emery High, Castledale, Utah. Maybe none of that rings a bell. That's where Sean Bradley went to school. So that's our only claim to fame, I guess, from that little 2A school, 3A school, maybe at the most.
There you go.
But no, that's where I did a lot of grade school and had a lot of friends in the church, and my family, growing up, has never really been active in the church. And so even though I've got a lot of pioneer ancestors, when you look at my line, my third great grandpa came over from England and in like the 1850s. And but the line that I come through, just a lot of people just fell away from the church and just couldn't like recapitulate the faith of the pioneer grandfather, right? And so growing up in Utah, I used to pray, and thank Heavenly Father, at least I was born in Utah, right? And I had a lot of LDS friends, and they took me to church with them, and I didn't really know who I was, or I didn't know my background, I didn't know my ancestry or anything like that. So at the time, anyway, but through lots of good influences, I decided to go on a mission, and some of those influences, might have been a girlfriend, but whatever, that was okay. It helped me get where I needed to be, and we can talk about that later. Remind me, because there's a story there with when I served with Chris Rogers for I dear Jane her, and she dear John me at the exact same time, and our letters crossed in the mail. But
really,
Elder Rogers helped me write the letter, so I want to talk to you about that later on. But I went, so for various reasons, maybe not all of them spiritual, I decided to serve a mission, and actually Scotland was towards the top of my list. I had one of my good buddies growing up that took me to church a lot. His dad was our stake president and our seminary teacher in 9th grade, and he had served in Scotland in the 60s. And so occasionally when we'd come to seminary class, he'd have his kilt on. He would have, pictures of Scotland, slideshow presentations and things like that, and just kind of go through and talk about Scotland. And so that was like drilled into me, at that young age or younger age. And so
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I submitted my paperwork just like everyone else, and I got the call, and I was at work, and my mom brought in the big white envelope, and I worked at the local grocery store, and so I just kind of opened it right there at work. And I called my stake president, and told him I had my call, and I said, "Now, where did you serve your mission?" He said, "Scotland." I said, "Well, guess what?" And he said, "No, you're not going to Scotland." and so we had that fun connection, because his sons decided not to serve missions. And that's fine. It's not a saving ordinance to serve a mission, but but for me and him, I thought it was fun that we shared that special connection for going to Scotland. So, and I met a couple people that knew him when he was a missionary in my first area, so that's kind of neat too. So,
yeah, that would be pretty cool to run into people that he had known or had run around with during the mission. That's exciting. So tell us the time frame again when you went on your mission.
Yeah, the spring, April, May 2000 to 2002. I was with the Clydes for one transfer, and then they went home, and the Wilkinsons came into the mission. And I think there was a lot of us, even only 6 weeks in, we're like, oh, we're going to show them, what we know. And, but, we quickly realized how inspired the Wilkinsons are, both Randy and Linda Wilkinson, and they were great mission presidents. And I think on his first night, I know on his first night, there was an issue in a 4-man flat where some elders were roughhousing, and they were on maybe the 2nd or 3rd floor. And one elder tackled another into like a bathroom sink, and the plumbing just exploded, and water went everywhere from the 3rd floor all the way down to the people below. I mean, this is at like 10 o'clock at night, right? And he told us later that was his welcome to the mission, his first night, having to deal with that. So anyway.
Someone else in our conversations has mentioned that, and I'm trying to recall who it was, but I'm sure it might come back in our conversation. That's pretty funny.
I'm bad with names, so I can't remember if it was in Edinburgh or if it was somewhere else, but maybe it'll come back to me.
Still pretty funny that that's a memory that you have that others obviously have heard from President Wilkinson. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, take us real quick, Steve, to life since the mission. You've been home now 22 years and some change.
Yeah.
Tell us what life has given you since returning from Scotland.
Yeah, it's been great. Sarah and I, we met the summer of 2002 in Nauvoo. I went home to Utah, but couldn't find a job. All my friends were either on mission still or in college. Had a friend that I'd grown up with in Utah that had since moved to Nauvoo. He called me up and said, "Hey, it's the open house for the temple, and we're so busy, and we can get you a job anywhere." So I got a plane ticket and flew to Nauvoo, and that's and my wife was in between semesters of BYU Idaho, and her parents had lived in Nauvoo, and so she was coming back home essentially for just to work and save money. And so we had some mutual friends that introduced us, and so we started dating after a few weeks. And fast forward to February of 2003, we come back and got married. It was -8 degrees outside.
Oh my gosh.
There was no snow on the ground. The flag was at half mast, and it was just like hell had frozen over, like like we were doomed or something. And but we were sealed in the Nauvoo temple, and if you look back at some of those wedding reception pictures, I've got there's a lot of just bad photos with no snow on the ground, things like that. But there's also a lot of photos of me with Pepto-Bismol in one hand and just drinking Pepto-Bismol the whole time.
Oh no.
I was like just nervous about everything, and so I was just like chugging this Pepto the whole time, and there's a lot of footage of that documented. So, but
just had a stomach thing going from being anxious, or
the nerves, I guess, just took over. But we have 4 kids now, and we 2 boys and 2 girls, and from age 20 down to 13. So far, I don't have any kids. I've got 2 kids. My oldest kid's in college, but no one's has served a mission yet. But there's still time for that, so we'll see what happens. So,
There you go.
but yeah, life's been good. Just worked various jobs to pay the bills. I didn't want to do college necessarily right away. Never been a very strong student as far as that goes, but eventually I got around to getting my bachelor's degree, just working at not like going to school at night and then, just working during the day. But I had always wanted to work for the church. And I know that sounds maybe a little silly. Church isn't well known for big salaries or anything like that. Right. But I always felt like if you have to work, why not like unite yourself with like the true organization, right? The true church. And so, but being out here in Indiana, there's just never an opportunity to do that. So I just kind of brushed it off. And about a year ago, the first presidency made an announcement that every temple in the church would have a full-time paid recorder. And I was an ordinance worker when I heard that announcement, and I thought, well, I meet the criteria, and so I submitted my application for that, went through the interviews, and got the job offer back in April of this year. So
Cool.
Since then, I've been full-time with the church as a full-time recorder in the temple department for the Louisville, Kentucky temple, and that's been a huge blessing to us to be in the temple essentially 45 to 50 hours a week is kind of cool and get paid for it. So, but it's a great gig. And we just feel very blessed that the opportunity went my way as far as that goes. So
that's amazing. You never spilled those beans with us, Steve, when you said you were starting a new job and all the things that kept us from getting together over the last few months, but that's pretty amazing. Good for you.
Yeah, it was a busy time, not just from onboarding, but like our temple was closed down for renovations, and there were some deadlines to get, to open back up, and we were just really trying to put in the hours to make sure we could open back up on May 7th. And so but it's been a big blessing, and I just kind of pinch myself every day when I go to work and I pull up to the temple and I'm like, I get to work here, so it's pretty fun.
Sounds like the most beautiful office building you could choose.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great. Very cool. Well, take us back to the mission now. You can start MTC or even jump right into Scotland, but go through areas, companions, and memories, and we'll be along for the ride.
Yeah, I'll just jump into the mission, into my first area with Paul Williams. He was my trainer, and we served together for 3 months. I had it was my responsibility to get all my mission stuff, all my shirts, my suits, my shoes, and everything, right? My luggage, and I was on a bit of a budget, so I had Kmart brand shoes and luggage, and that stuff instantly fell apart when I start, really hit the ground running with Paul. He was hard to keep up with, and we served in Sterling, and I literally think my luggage fell apart from the train station in Sterling to our first, to our apartment, to our flat.
Oh man!
And
yeah.
And then I had these clunky Kmart brand, just dress shoes, and they weighed like 10 pounds each, and I didn't know any better, right? And I ended up with blisters like all over the bottom of my feet and on both feet, and it was just miserable. But that's a good segue into the wrap lock, because I know that came up in talking with Paul on the episode.
He did mention that.
Man, so the wrap lock was like the war zone, right? It was like, I don't know if you guys have heard of like Gary, Indiana, or if you've ever been to, some pretty dangerous places, but it was like the worst part of the area. And so he thought, I'll just take this brand new greenie to the very worst part of the mission, or maybe not of the mission, but of the area. And And luckily it was in the middle of the day, so that helped. But if it had been nighttime, like, I don't know if we would have survived. But we go and we teach somebody, which is great. But as we're leaving, we're getting this group of guys just like throwing rocks at us, threatening to steal our shoes, mooning us. We're trying to like speed walk out of there as fast as possible. So like, we didn't get jumped or anything like that. I know some missionaries can tell those stories, but so it wasn't that bad. But I'm like, but that was my first real experience with missionary work in Scotland. And so I'm thinking like, what did I sign up for? Right. Like, and so, and so after that, we keep tracking and he took, went to some different suburbs and different neighborhoods and stuff. And I'm like fighting back the tears. I'm like, cause I had kind of a bad experience. And when we got back to the flat, I was really hesitant to ask for a blessing. I just didn't want to like show that vulnerability, I guess, or, but I did. And I'm glad that I did, because the first thing that Paul said to me once he laid his hands on my head was to never be afraid to ask for a blessing or a priesthood blessing. And I hadn't told him anything about it. I just asked if he would give me a blessing. And so I knew that he was in tune with the Spirit, and that the Heavenly Father conveyed that message to me. And so these little tiny line upon line testimony building things started to happen even from day one. And that's, to me, my mission. Scotland, as you both know, is not a high baptizing mission, but really the convert is me, because of the process and all the experiences that I had from serving, and just gaining these experiences is what really solidified my foundation. But I can talk about that forever. So, so that was the rap walk. Again, didn't get mugged or anything like that, but it was really scary for me as a little 19-year-old from Emory County, Utah, right? And having that as my first experience. But I submit to you both that during that 12 weeks that we were together, we worked harder, or he worked me harder, I don't know how to say it, than any other missionary or companionship in the history of the church. Paul was a workaholic and perfectly obedient to the mission rules. And I'm telling you, in those 3 months, I probably worked harder than a lot of missionaries do in the whole 2 years that they're on a mission. But I give Paul all the credit for that, because he had the vision to set that bar really high to begin with. So it was great.
Oh my gosh. Yes, we've heard the stories both from Paul's mouth as well as from his companions, how dedicated he was to his craft, which is pretty amazing.
Well, and I'm going to I'll get back into companions in a second, but I'll fast forward to a time again in Nauvoo. I'm at the temple. So Sarah and I, because we have common friends there, we go back to visit, once or twice a year. And this was a long time ago. I haven't seen Paul since the mission. So there was a time when I'm in the temple at Nauvoo. It's like a Labor Day weekend or something like that. And we had a few extra days, so we went back to visit. And this was a long time ago. This is probably like 15 years ago. And I see someone I recognize from my home ward, or from my ward in Indiana. And I said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" His name was Jonathan Goodsell. And he said, "Well, I'm here. We brought a group of seminary kids that I used to teach, and that he used to teach in DC. And we promised them. I co-taught it with somebody, and we promised them that we would take them to Nauvoo if they, read the Book of Mormon, in 30 days or whatever." And so I was in a hurry, and I said, "Okay, great. Have a great time. We'll see you back in Indiana." And as I'm going down the stairwell, the spiral staircase, right in the temple, I had an impression that said, "You need to slow down." But I was in a hurry because my wife needed to go to the next session, and I needed to go take care of the kids. And I said, "I can't slow down. My wife's waiting for me." And so I just booked it out of there. And so probably 2-3 months later, I'm back in Indiana, and I'm talking to that same buddy, Jonathan Goodsell, and I said, "Hey, who were you there with when you were in Nauvoo? Who were you co-teaching with?" Said, "Oh, it was a guy named Paul Williams that is from England, and we served together, and
Oh, my word.
And I'm like, wait, who? Like, did he serve his mission in Scotland?" And he said, "Oh yeah, do you know him?" I'm like, he was my trainer. And
Oh my word.
So Nauvoo's, as you probably both know, is a small town, and we were there the exact same weekend. We were in the temple the exact same time, probably in the dressing room at the exact same time. But I got in too much of a hurry, and I didn't listen to the spirit that said, "You need to slow down," or else I could have had a wonderful reunion with Paul right there in the temple.
Man.
So
unbelievable.
And the lesson is not lost on me. It's taught me to pay attention to your impressions and follow them. When the spirit whispers, you need to really recognize it for what it is and pay attention to it. So, but
it's quite an experience, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Steve.
No problem. So back to companions, I went from Sterling to Dalkeith. I was a ZLC. Did you guys have that terminology in your mission?
No, they had changed it.
Yeah. So
was it before you got there, Jack?
Yeah, they had not too long before I got there, but yeah, they'd gone to just zone leader companionships.
Yeah. So ZLC to Elder Farnsworth, then Chris Rogers, and we'll talk about that story, the Dear Jane, Dear John story, and Elder Michael Patrick from St. Louis. I don't know if you guys have interviewed him or not yet, but got along great with all three of those guys. Farnsworth was great. Same type of work ethic as Paul. And we got along really well. Rogers comes in. We had a lot of fun together. He's an attorney, so he likes to debate on about anything and everything. And it just felt like we argued all the time, but it wasn't like arguing, like contentious arguing. It was just, brotherly banter or whatever you want to call it. Right. So we just had a great time together, but I've been on the mission for about 6 months, I suppose, maybe a little longer. And I had that girlfriend back in Emory County that I mentioned, and she just kept sending a lot of like mushy letters and, talking about like, having babies when we get home and when I get home, and just all this stuff that wasn't like very helpful. And I was trying to focus. I was trying to be a good missionary and just could not cope with all these letters. And I kept like requesting that, to help me stay focused. And she's a great person. I don't mean anything by it. I mean, she's, there's no issues as far as all that stuff goes, but I just needed help to stay focused. So I told Chris, I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about, breaking it off with my girlfriend because I want to be focused. I'm here for a reason.
Yeah.
And I said, but I need help with the letter. Like, and he's good with words because, he's an attorney. Right. So, and so I said, can you help me write the letter? He's like, oh, let's do it. And so I would tell him like what I'm thinking, and and he said, okay, write it like this, and and I'm sure she read the letter and she's like, who wrote this letter? She's probably Steve Harward didn't write this, but so we write. I wish I made a copy because it'd be great to go back and read it, but we wrote this letter. Send it off in the mail, and as you guys know, well, I don't know, you guys are probably emailing by the time 2005. Anyway,
yeah, that's true.
It would take a week for a letter to get there, and then a week for a letter to get back, right? So 2 weeks goes by, and I get a letter from her in the mail, and I open it up, and I'm thinking, okay, here's the response to my Dear Jane letter, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense, like wait, she's Dear Johning me. So she wasn't like acknowledging my letter. She hadn't seen it yet, but she wrote her own. Yeah, she wrote her own Dear John letter to me, and she got married pretty quickly after that, I think. And she's had a great family and great husband and great kids and everything. Everybody married who they were supposed to marry, and it's been great as far as that goes. But I gave Chris all the credit for helping me write that letter, and that was fun.
I have a follow-up question, Steve. So did you ever come in contact with this girlfriend after you got home, or was she long gone at that point in time after being married? And
no, I don't think I've seen her. I came home for like 6 weeks to that area in Utah.
right.
Everybody was gone, you know, the at SUU, or they were, you know, different BYU, you know, on missions. Everybody was gone. So that was one reason why I was like, you know, anxious to go to Nauvoo, because it was something different, and I could get a job and things like that. So
yeah. I was just curious if you'd ever run into her and she said that she had written that letter and then like X amount of days later received yours or whatever, because like you said, if she didn't acknowledge it, she had to have gotten it fairly close after she put hers in the post.
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the opportunity down the road will present itself to talk about that. But
maybe.
Anyway.
That's pretty cool.
But so that was Dalkeith. From there, when I got my driver's license in that area, and, you know, took lessons and all that stuff, and that was helpful because I was in a car area every area after that. So get your license if you're going on a mission, I guess, is the lesson there. But I went up to Peterhead after that, and I think Zach, you served there, right?
I did, and Jack trained me there, so we both did. So you're talking to kindred spirits here with the love of Peterhead and the Buchan Ward. Yeah,
so I had a hard time with that area. I just struggled there. It was my least favorite area, not because of the ward or the people. It was my own problems, right? And you know, the culture was just a little different than what I had been trained on with Elder Williams and Elder Farnsworth and Chris Rogers, you know, all these great missionaries, and you know, nothing bad or negative, just different. And I just had just wasn't used to it. And so I just had a hard time. And the area itself is tough, as you guys, well, maybe it wasn't for you, I don't know, but for me it was tough.
It was tough. It was challenging for sure.
And we didn't have a building at the time. You know, we met in that school building, and you know, I don't think they turned the heat on in the winter, and I don't know. It was just it was just hard to like really connect with people and get people to come to church in a school building too. You know, that was tough. It was tough.
Yeah.
But I was with Elder Morelli for the first 6 weeks, and he's such a sweet guy. You know, he was very, very good to me. We got along great. There was a time when I had to travel. We did an exchange or something, and I had to go to the mission home. I can't remember the circumstance, but I didn't have any money. I was like out of cash. I was in between paychecks, you know, so to speak. And he gave me some money, and you know, he was just a good dude, just kind of a bigger brother as far as that goes, older brother. But then I trained. He left after 6 weeks, and I trained Elder Barnard, Craig Barnard. Do you guys know Craig? Has he been on the show or on the podcast?
No, he hasn't.
He's the funniest guy on the planet, man. He's so funny. We just laughed all the time. The work was still tough, and I still had my own like struggles, and you know, I kind of went into a little bit of a tailspin. Nothing like dark or, you know, depression or anything like that, but just struggled with the lack of success, right, and on the mission, and I kind of became a little bit of a, busybody, or like a what is it called when you or like a hover helicopter person. I was too worried about what other people were doing and not concerned enough about what I was doing. And I wish I could go back in time and change that and just focus on my companionship and the work that we needed to do in Peterhead, and maybe it would have been more effective. But I went from there down to Annan, and I became a trainer, trained Elder Millar and not Elder Millar. He'd already been on the mission, but I trained, I trained Barnard. I mentioned that. And then I trained Elder Jensen, Ty Jensen. So Millar and Jensen were the two that I served with. But working with Millar, having been in Peterhead for 6 depressing months, it took a little bit. It just took a little while to shake that off. And some of that followed me into Annan, and that's down by the borders, right, Dumfries area. Yeah. Still keep in touch with people from that area. That became my favorite area, or one of my favorite areas. And I think the reason for that is, President Wilkinson really helped me get out of that rut that I was in. He could tell something was off. And he said, he pulled me in, for our 6-week interview. And he said, I'm very concerned about you. And, I've gotten a few reports that you're not as motivated as you used to be. I mean, because you look back at the history of companions that I had great companions my whole mission. But here I was struggling, from this experience. And he said, he asked me a question. He said, "Do you have confidence in me as your mission president?" I said, "Of course." There was never an issue there. He said, "I'm going to give you, 5 to 7 things that if you'll do these things for a week, I promise you that you'll feel better about your mission. You'll feel better in general, and you'll look forward to going out and doing the work every day." And it was the basic stuff. It was get up on time. It was study the Book of Mormon. It was study with your companion. It was, just follow the mission rules. And then he said, and the thing that really took me back in that interview is he said, "I want you to pray for a bigger testimony." And at the time, I'm like, I'm a full-time missionary. Why would I pray to have a bigger testimony? He's like, "Well, if you had a better testimony, you wouldn't be struggling right now." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So,
yeah, interesting.
So I did that, and that coupled with, following all the rules and just, being a go-getter again, really changed my mindset. And within that 7 days, I can bear testimony that I totally had like a 180 experience. And I went from like kind of, dreading the work every day to like there's not enough hours in the day to do everything that we need to do, right? And that happened inside of a week. And I think it was because of my the inspired counsel of my mission president. But I'll pause there for a story. So this is a good poop story. So you guys probably, I don't know if you've had any poop stories on the podcast yet, but every missionary has a good poop story, and this is a good one. So I'm on exchanges with Elder Giddings. He was an AP at the time. I'm fast forwarding a little bit. I'm ahead of the story like chronologically, but we're in Edinburgh. We're relatively close to the mission home. And I think I was a zone leader, and I think we were just doing a 24-hour exchange, right? Yeah. And we'd been tracking this, one of the high-rise flats that's like, I don't know, 15 stories high. And we'd been there all day. No one had let us in. And come dinner time, the local Edinburgh elders, I apologize, I can't remember their names, said, "We'll feed you guys dinner." So we left, ate dinner with them, and we thought, well, there's still time. Let's go finish that high rise. And because we'd been there all day, we knew that every level had like a garbage chute, a little like utility closet. You go in, you can close the door behind you, you can lock it. It has a garbage chute and some other stuff, right? And we knew that because we had snacks and we've been like, eating candy bars and using the garbage chute for all of our rubbish. And
oh no.
So after, you know where this is going. But after we eat, I'm like, let's go back and finish that high rise. And no one's letting us in. And all of a sudden my stomach just starts gurgling, like just upset, diarrhea type gurgling. And I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have to poop. And so I couldn't hold it back any longer. Elder Giddings is right next to me. I said, I just ran off to that little utility closet. I slammed the door behind me, locked it, opened up that nasty garbage chute, and it opened up. I'm 6'4", so I'm a little bit taller. It opens up to like a 45-degree angle. I sit on that and just explosive diarrhea all over the place.
Oh my word.
I feel so bad for like the poor Scottish woman that came to drop off her trash for the day, or the person below. I don't know. But so I'm like, what do I do? So now I'm like, hindsight, I should have like taken my sock off, right? I didn't have any toilet paper with me, obviously. But I see like this plastic Tesco grocery bag on the ground. I just grabbed that thing and made it work. And so
wow.
I get myself put back together, open the door from that closet, and right there is Elder Giddings just smiling, from ear to ear, because he knew what was happening. And I said, dude, we have to go back to the mission home. I need to shower like right now. And so now that I've like permanently drove away the spirit, we can get back into the meat of the podcast. But I just it's life as a missionary, right? Those things happen. And I just thought, we'll just take a minute and pause here for that story. So
it's such a true point, though, Steve. Like, how many of us that knock doors in Scotland had the audacity to say, "You're not interested"? Well, can I use your toilet? That just didn't happen. And despite the Scottish hospitality of people, like, very rarely, if ever, did you get to use the restroom in someone's home that didn't want anything to do with you. So I think you saved yourself a worse story by utilizing what you did. So well done on your thinking. That's very smart.
Oh man, it was a doozy. That reminds me of there's another bathroom story. It's not as bad, but I was with Farnsworth, again, my second companion, and I don't know if it was jet lag or what, but we tracked it into this old lady, like 80 years old. She let us come in, and maybe we shouldn't because it was just 2-on-1, whatever. She was old, it's fine. But we go in. I'm so tired, and I just like falling asleep at the couch, right? And I'm like, hey, can I use your bathroom? Can I use your toilet? And go in. And I didn't need to use the bathroom, but I just sat down, I closed the lid, sat down, and I just went like this. I'm just going to close my eyes for just a minute. Well, like 20 minutes went by, I think. And
20 minutes?
I don't know, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. And I come back out, my face is all red, from this. And Elder Farnsworth looks at me like, hey, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I feel great. I just had a power nap. I didn't tell him that, but so anyway, that's a little tangent there, but the bathroom story made me think of it. So,
oh my gosh, he thought you were in there just like dying, I guess.
I think so. Yeah.
Jeez,
maybe he knocked on the door or something. I was just out of it. So
that's hilarious.
But let me see here. there was I mentioned Annan, had a great time there. I was there for 6 months, and then I went to the Mother World Zone as zone leader, and I was companions with Elder Jarman, and then Schumard, who you've had on the podcast, I think, right? I think his was one of the first episodes I saw, but and then Elder Blake was Jeremy Blake was my last companion, but Schumard was a workhorse as well. He had served in Peterhead. He followed me into that area. He served with Barnard, and then we became companions for a little bit. There was a time when we would work just all day, 12 hours, whatever. No one's letting us in. It's cold, it's wet, it's whatever. And at the end of the day, we're like, let's go to the chip shop, get a chippy, and just go home, right? And it's winter time. We go in, and we're waiting in line just to get our chippy. And some punk kid opens up the door, and then just out of nowhere, this ice ball, snowball just comes flying through and hits me right in the face. Like just out of nowhere. It hurt so bad. And the little restaurant was full of people, and they all saw it, and they're like, "Oh, like, what are you gonna do?" And so we go out, and we're like calling them on, like, "Hey, come on, let's," we'd had it,
Oh,
well,
no.
there was like 15 of them out there in a group, and it's just me and Elder Schumer. And so luckily, like, they didn't attack us. We went back in, paid for our food, and then we're like, oh, now we got to go back out and cross the street where we parked our car. And we're just like saying a emergency prayer, like, Heavenly Father, help us out of this one. Like, we thought for sure they were going to jump us because but we went out, they were gone. We went home and ate our food. So Heavenly Father blessed us. Better, I think it's Dave Ramsey that says when people ask how he's doing, he'll say better than I deserve. And we didn't deserve that blessing.
Yeah.
But we got it. So,
oh my gosh, you probably scared him away being as tall as you are. I mean, Jack and I are both taller individuals too, and thankfully not many run-ins with the NEDs as we know them,
yes.
because of our stature, or at least that was my presumption. So
yeah, I mean, but if you look at, like, when I go to the doctor and you look at like how much I weigh now, I should be like 7 feet tall, but it's just, but I'm growing just in the opposite direction, or the wrong direction. But I think it's sympathy weight. We have 4 kids, and every time Sarah got pregnant, I just gained a little weight, right? And after 4 kids, I told her, I said, look, you got to stop getting pregnant, because this is wreaking havoc on my body. Like, this is just, and she's like,
because you keep saving it.
Yeah, I think she made me sleep on the couch after I said that, but
I bet she did.
That's I'll pause for one story that's humorous, but also shows the great sense of humor that my wife has. So we had been married 9 years. We wanted to go out. It was our anniversary, but we couldn't find a babysitter. And so we thought, well, we'll make a fancy dinner at home. So we had candles, and we had the kids with their little champagne glasses with sparkling apple cider, right, and all that stuff. And they're like, wow, why are you doing this big fancy dinner? And we tried to explain everything. And so it's our 9th wedding anniversary. And so Sarah's asking all the kids, and they were younger. This was like 11, 12 years ago. And asked them why mom and dad love each other. And the kids would give like their standard response. Well, because mom cooks dinner, or, dad goes to work, or, just primary answers. Right. And it gets around to my son, Landon, who's now 20. But at the time, I think he was 8 or 9. And I said, Landon, why do you think, mom and dad love each other? And he said, and Sarah had asked the question, he said, because you're fat. And I'm like, oh no, this is a train wreck. This is our wedding anniversary. And so I get in his little 9-year-old face and I'm like, hey, that's my wife you're talking about. You need to apologize right now, young man. And I'm really like thinking I got this under control, right? And then the next thing that pops out of my mouth, and I'm surprised I'm still married, but I said, and besides, if you gave birth to 4 kids, you'd be fat too. And,
Oh my
but that's not what I meant. But it just like I couldn't pull it back in. It just came out, and then I look at my wife, and she just bursts out, not in tears, but she bursts out in laughter because she knew what I was trying to do. But
Thank goodness.
yeah, thank goodness. But that's just the sense of humor that my wife has because she's put up with that kind of stuff. I have a lot of older Facebook posts that are titled "What Not to Do as a Husband," and there's about 6 or 7 of those if you go digging through the archives, and you can find some more stories like that. So
that's hilarious. That's very good. So you had Elder Jarman, Elder Shoemart, who was your third companion in Motherwell?
Yeah, Elder Blake, Jeremy Blake. I think he was from St. George. Great guy. Became a police officer. I'm not sure if he's still doing that or not, but he was super humble, great worker, and just loves our time together. It was brief together, but he put up with my shenanigans, and then I went home, and so that in a nutshell is the list of companions and the areas, yeah, I'm not. Hopefully, I didn't leave anybody out. I don't think I did. But
no worries. If you were left off of Steve's list, we'd love you to reach out to our podcast and come on and put Steve on blast for forgetting you. No, I'm sure you're perfectly fine. Steve, do you have any particular memories of the Wilkinsons that are fond memories of your experiences with them while in the mission?
Well, they were just I still try to keep in touch with the Wilkinsons. About once a year I'll reach out and see how they're doing. They just made such a big impact to me as this like less active kid, from Emory County, Utah. I say less active because for a long time I was, and I would go to church with my friends for a time, and then I'd kind of drop off the map. And I wasn't ordained a teacher because I wasn't active during that 2-year window, right? And but what I always admired about both Wilkinsons, Randy and Linda Wilkinson, but just the dedication and work ethic and just like grit, and how serious, like they could be serious when they needed to be firm, and but also show a more gentle side, and just I don't know, just their commitment to serving the Lord was just really like blew me away. And it wasn't just like another calling for them. Like they just really, I think, were some of the best, most effective mission presidents. Of course I'm partial to them, but just really did a great job and taught me a lot of things. And so over the years, we visited. If we're in Utah, we'll try to stop by. It's been a long time since we've been back, but love serving with them, and wish them all the best.
That's great.
So,
any memories with the Clydes at all? Like you said, you came in with your hair on fire and trying to make an impression.
Yeah, it was. I wish I had more substance there, but it was just that 6 weeks, right? And they were on their way out, and I was on my way in, and I wouldn't dare accuse them of being trunky or anything like that. It's not that. It's just they were leaving, and I was, they were going home, and I was coming in as a new missionary. So don't have too many memories there as far as that goes. But yeah, they seemed like great people at the time. So
yeah. I'm sure you're not the only one who has had that similar experience where you have such a short time frame with one set of mission presidents and their wife, and
Yeah.
and then ultimately have, like you said, the majority of your mission with the Wilkinsons. So that's a fair suggestion. And like you said, they'd done their work over a 3-year period, and they made sure you were alive for 6 weeks and then passed the torch, right?
Yep. Yep. And I think, like I said early on, not a lot of convert baptisms on my mission, but I had a lot of experiences that converted me to the gospel because I didn't, grow up with that. My parents didn't take me to church. We didn't have family home evening. We didn't go to the temple together. I'm not sealed to my parents, and I'm not trying to say all that so that you feel bad for me. That's not the point. The point is the mission is what really set me up for success and gave me those experiences and had such a profound impact on me that I just can't imagine not serving or what I don't know where else I would get those types of experiences all crammed together within 2 years, without serving a mission. And so I'm always advocating, for folks to serve missions for young men and young women. And again, not that it's a saving ordinance as far as that goes. You're not asked in your temple recommend if you've served a mission, but just the converting power is so strong. And I just loved every minute of it, except for the Peterhead minutes. I didn't. No, I don't know. I'm not trying to. I don't want some of the people I know in Peterhead Kelly and those guys, the Parks. I don't want them to see this and be like, "Oh, you didn't like the time there." But it wasn't them; it was just me. I just had my own struggles, But anyway,
And when were you in Peterhead? What was the time of year?
Old time. It was.
It
Had
cold.
to be. It had to be. It might not have been like December, January timeframe, but it was at least the fall. I'm trying to remember exactly. I couldn't find my. I'm a little worried now. I couldn't find my journal. I've got my tea book, but that's not the same. But I don't know where my journal is. I used it not too long ago when I gave a talk. I referenced something of that, so I know it's around, but I couldn't find it. So I'm a little fuzzy on the chronology for Peterhead, but it was cold and smelled like fish. So but that's to be expected, right?
Yeah, you could get a second and a third vote from Jack and I for that, because Jack trained me the end of January. And my goodness, January, February, and March in Peterhead are easily the coldest experience that I had on the mission. And that's saying something from other places I served. So I can feel your pain, Steve. Let's say that.
Yeah. What flat did you live in Peterhead? Was it like Victorian Avenue apartment? Or
No, I think they had changed it because we lived on King Street. There's like the big roundabout right as you come into Peterhead proper, and if you get onto King Street, it's almost like immediately there on the left-hand side is where our flat was when we stayed there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they must have changed it. So
yeah,
that's okay.
Well, I'd love to hear your experience in hearing the announcement of the temple that's coming in Scotland that happened at a conference in April.
Yeah, I mean, I've always, anytime there was an announcement since I've been home, right? Anytime there was an announcement for temples, I'm like, oh, I wonder if Scotland's going to get one. And lo and behold, 20 something years later.
Yeah, that's right.
Super, super excited. I kind of keep in touch with some folks through Facebook and just talking to them. So, hey, if you want to come over during the open house, you can stay here and so on and so forth. And so I think, we'll try to save a few bucks and go when the temple's, being dedicated. And I don't know, maybe I can be the recorder for the Edinburgh temple when the time comes, but I'm not sure my wife would go along with that. So all of her family lives. We all live in basically the same neighborhood. I mean, her two sisters are within walking distance. Her brother, I can like throw a rock and hit his house. Her parents are a mile down the road.
Wow.
So if we moved, it would disrupt the whole order, and we'd be in big trouble. But
well, maybe you could just ask for a special assignment to go and train the new recorder, and then that'll give you an opportunity to get over there and be there and experience it, but then also contribute because of your experience now.
Yeah, I would definitely jump at the chance to do something like that, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. I still have a lot to learn. I've only been in the saddle for like 5 months now, so but it's been a fun gig for sure, and it's kind of feels like a calling at the same time. It is a job that provides for my family, but it feels like a calling too, and because and even other people ask me, so like, can you have a calling now? Like, like, well, yeah, I can still have other callings in the church, because it's not technically a calling, right? But anyway, but it's so I don't know. I'm rambling on now. So
no, you've been great. This has been a lot of fun, Steve. The last thing that we typically ask is there any of those that you served with or otherwise that you'd like to take an opportunity to call out and invite them to come on the podcast and share their experiences with us?
There's a couple guys I haven't seen or heard from in a long time. Not that I necessarily served with, but like Mark Grant was one of the APs. I don't know what happened to him. He I think was his own leader in Aberdeen while I was in Peterhead, and then he became an AP, and he was a super bright guy, super talented. I wonder where he's at. So Mark Grant would be one.
Okay.
I mentioned Craig Barnard. I mean, we served together for 4.5 months, and he's just a riot, man. He's got some stories. So I don't, if you do get him on the podcast, I don't want to steal his thunder by, saying anything, but he's got some cool stories for sure. Okay. Dean Erickson was in my MTC district, and we didn't serve together, but we kind of served around. He was in Aberdeen when I was in Peterhead anyway. So Dean Erickson's got some cool stories that he can share, from like dead bodies to catching finding dead bodies to seeing a burglar kind of like shimmy his way up the drain pipe going up the backside of a complex or apartment building. Someone breaking into like the neighboring flat. I love Dean. We're good friends now. We keep in touch a lot, but he's got some cool stories. Not that it's all about like adventure or whatever, but
it is. It was an adventure. Just say it outright for everybody listening. Yeah. It was an adventure for sure, Steve.
It was. Yes. I would do it again. I'd do it all over again, and I would work with the same exact people, and just it was one of the biggest blessings to serve in Scotland, and to have this fraternity, or this camaraderie with everybody, even from different eras, is great, because we can all relate to the work and how challenging it was and rewarding it was. And, I just wouldn't change anything.
I love it. I love it. Any other names before? You've named some good ones, and beyond that, I was looking at it. We've got, beyond Paul Williams and Blair Schumar, we've talked to. We did just have Chris Rogers and his wife on recently, so if you haven't listened to that one, that was a lot of fun.
Yes, I did.
Any of your other companions that you may or may not still be in touch with, by all means, invite them to come on the podcast, and maybe it's an opportunity to reconnect and rekindle those relationships as well.
For sure, I'll do that. Bradley Millar is one I mentioned that I served with in Annan, and not quite sure what that dude's up to. You know, I don't see him much on social media. Not that I'm on there a lot either, but be interesting to see what he's up to all these years later.
Yeah. Okay.
But I guess to summarize, I learned a lot about prayer. I learned a lot about how to recognize the promptings and how to follow those and start. And I've had experiences since, as I kind of alluded to the Nauvoo one, right, and other experiences. But I think just really getting that foundation underneath me to set me up for the rest of my life happened in Scotland, and just it's a remarkable thing that you guys are doing, taking time out of your busy schedules to interview everybody, and thanks for doing that.
Yeah, it's truly a pleasure for Jack and I to have these conversations. And as you mentioned as well, we have quite the extensive family in our brothers and sisters that have served in the Scotland Edinburgh Mission and beyond that. And more than anything, this is an opportunity for all of us to reach out to each other and express how much we love each and every one of our brothers and sisters, especially you, Steve. We're so grateful that you are one of our brothers that served in the mission, that really paved the way for those of us that followed, and I would imagine planted some seeds along the way for us to harvest as well. So we love you, Steve, and we're really grateful that you made time for us. This podcast doesn't happen without your time that is shared with us to come on and reminisce and laugh and smile and just feel the joy that we do have when memories of Scotland come through our minds. So thank you.
No problem. Appreciate your guys' time and wish you all the best.
Thank you, Steve. We'll give you a cheerio and we'll talk more soon. All right.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.